nobody has polled on this topic. Chemtrails. So let's sit back for a minute and listen to RFK talk.
With one thing that a lot of people have heard about, and nobody really knows what to think about it, but chemtrails is are chemtrails real? And tell us about them.
Let's start with the appropriate place to start. What we're seeing in our skies are not condensation trails in almost all cases. They are sprayed particulate trails, and we're not speculating. We have up-close film footage of military tankers and commercial, nozzles visible, turning on and off, geoengineeringwatch.org as a part of the film The Dimming. At great effort and expense, we acquired a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab with top scientists in it, took samples at altitude behind heavy aircraft. We sampled what they were emitting. The sample was processed at one of the top testing institutions in the world. We found exactly what we knew we would find: climate engineering elements, starting with aluminum, which is named in one of the most significant climate engineering patents. And the climate engineers themselves have stated their goal of putting tens of millions of tons of aluminum nanoparticles into the atmosphere annually as part of solar radiation management to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy with no consideration of the consequences whatsoever.
So that's really fascinating, in my opinion. So there's a lot to unpack here. If you look up, obviously, there are contrails. Obviously, when a plane flies through a moist atmosphere and there's a drastic change in pressure, some condensation happens, you get a little poof of cloud out the back of the plane. That happens. But what we're looking at here is presidential candidate RFK Jr., who, if you don't know, created a 501c3 called Children Health Defense. And his life's work has been devoted to uncovering all of the poisons that environmentally afflict children in America, which is a lot. Some of that's vaccine, some of it's the food supply, and some of it is this. And he has a guest here that eloquently describes what we're talking about, which is an increased level of concentration of different particulates and chemicals that have been measured, ostensibly measured. Now, what I can say is that I haven't seen any conclusive science, but I haven't been looking. Also, I don't really trust conclusive science, to be honest with you. But I also know that RFK Jr. has an organization that goes over these things, that talks to scientists, that looks at the papers, that tries to understand how big the issue is. And this is something that they have been following. And I think the major takeaway now is that RFK Jr. is in a place to do something about it at a national level. And what's also kind of wild, too, is that there's an aspect of children health defense that used to be focused on climate emergencies. And a lot of people there were also concerned about climate change. And I don't think that that's at the top of their bill anymore. I think that it's things like this. Like, let's be real, this is an Alex Jones trope. Right along there with making the frogs gay, it's the chemtrails. And I think people dismiss that as a conspiracy theory to attack it. But also, as we all know, there's big dollars in these massive initiatives trying to geoengineer the planet, trying to essentially, it's crazy. They're like, oh, man, I'll never go to Mars. How are you going to terraform that? And then they're terraforming Earth. It's crazy. Are they doing it intentionally? Is it additives to jet fuel? I don't know. But we're talking about public opinion, not the merits of this particular issue. And why this is important and why this is a thing is that now multiple states are actually pursuing legislation to ban this stuff, which is pretty wild. Because I think you'll find that if there are any coordinated efforts to do this stuff, they're federal taxpayer funded initiatives, right? Stuff coming out of USAID or the Green New Deal or whatever. The Florida bill would ban chemtrails and geoengineering. But what are they? Well, we're not going to go into all of this, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis recently said that he'd sign into law a ban on weather modification activities, such as spreading tiny particulates into the air from aircraft to control sunlight It raised longstanding controversies over geoengineering and chemtrails. I think it's kind of caricatured as kooky, DeSantis said during a May 6th news conference in Miami. But if you look, there are movements, private businesses, and their view is we can save you from global warming by injecting different things in the atmosphere, block the sun, and doing all this stuff. So he's not addressing it. He's just saying, well, there's companies that say it's going to happen at some point, and we should just get out in front and ban this stuff. I guess that's one potentially courageous way to address this. And that is something that we're not going to do in Florida, right? We're the sunshine state and we want to have nice sunshine. Well, it's like, okay, Children's Health Defense. Go look at it and see if there's any research, see if about health of the children in the state of Florida. So even he's sidestepping this. He is sidestepping talking about potential realities of this stuff. But what's important, in my opinion, is what Americans think, because chemtrails, 60% actually support laws to ban weather modification. Oh, interesting. Let's go to the crosstab, shall we? I think we're going to find some fun surprises in here. Yes, as far as I know, maybe we can ask Rock. Maybe somebody in the chat could ask Rock. Has anybody ever polled on chemtrails? We did. We did. We've polled on a lot of stuff that other people haven't. That's why you follow us. That's why you follow us. How likely is it that government agencies have been secretly releasing chemicals into the atmosphere as part of geoengineering and weather modification activities? Only 20% say very likely, but that's almost higher than the 22% of people who say that they or somebody they know has seen a UFO. So is that conspiracy level? I don't know. 24% say somewhat likely, so 44% total say that it's likely that government agencies are secretly releasing chemicals, but 64% say it's likely that the CIA, for instance, is providing talking points to political news organizations. So Mockingbird is 64% likely, chemtrails is 44% likely. I still think that's high enough to say that where there's smoke, there's probably fire. 44% is a pretty big number. Now, maybe it's just a resounding vote of no confidence in the government, complete lack of trust because of the Biden presidency. That could be. 19% say not very likely. Only 20% say not at all likely. So only 20% say that there's no way that our government is spraying poison into the air, essentially. Whatever. We didn't like that's probably a histrionic way to say it. But that 20% is really low. Only 1 in 5 Americans say there's no way our government's letting this happen. That's wild. 35% of Democrats, almost 60% of Republicans, and what's that? 39% of independents. 60% of Republicans, strong. Only 27% say not likely. But the state legislature in Florida recently passed legislation to prohibit the release of chemicals into the sky to alter the weather or atmosphere. Would you support or oppose similar legislation in your state? Hell yeah. People want this. 60%. Only 27% say no. More than a 2-to-1. More than a 2-to-1. Let's get this. It's a no-brainer. It's probably bipartisan. 51%, a majority of Democrats say, yeah, we probably shouldn't be geoengineering by releasing chemicals into the sky. What about climate change, guys? Like, aren't you worried about the temperature of what about climate change? Just blows my mind. I made a remark today that a lot of people didn't appreciate. Look at that, 71% of Republicans. Yep. Maybe it's like, oh, Florida, it must be Ron DeSantis. I'll agree with anything that guy does, maybe. But independents aren't thinking that way. And independents are 58% to only 27%. So whether there's merit to chemtrails or not, it seems like the level of interest with voters is high enough that people should really be considering regulations like this. Like, let's make our skies cleaner. Let's live a little bit longer. Our declining life expectancy, reduced birth rates, the population implosion that's coming, and we're doing it to ourselves. This is probably like Cloward Piven. It's probably Soros up there, allegedly. People flying these things, or I don't know. But another conspiracy theory essentially proven, look at that. It's a plurality. A plurality of Americans think that the government is likely doing the chemtrails. Alex Jones was right. Another dollar in his jar. Another dollar in the Alex Jones was right jar. I thought you guys would like that. It was fun to poll. But the bar for what's fun to me is kind of low, I have to admit. I get excited by like percentages. If you've learned something, please follow us at RasmussenReports.com, Rasmussen_poll at Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Mark_R_Mitchell at Twitter. And thanks for watching.